So, let me bring you back to earth. On behalf of the Hospital of Rethymno, the pediatric clinic, allow me to thank the organizing committee for the invitation to participate in your conference, which is a recognition of the work that we have been conducting and promoting over the past years. Let me congratulate them on the excellent organization, and let me try to support pediatricians and hospital pediatricians, because we're not all unethical. Not all of us try to mislead parents, and not all of us have bad behavior towards the parents or the babies. Some of us really try hard, and we promise to try even harder. I'd like to give the floor to Mrs. Zoe Iliodromiti, who is a scientific collaborator of the Institute on the Health of the Children, who will touch upon the Alkyoni initiative, which is the national initiative on breastfeeding, in favor of breastfeeding. Allow me to also thank the organizing committee for such a successful conference, full of energy and full of dance energy. We saw the dancers earlier; they're very nice, and your energy here is very beautiful. This is quite encouraging. Allow me to add that I totally agree. Indeed, doctors try harder and harder every day, and this is why training is of vital importance. I work at a hospital, and I see those specializing new doctors, and they come to me and they want to be trained adequately, efficiently. There's a dextrot 35. What should I do with it? It depends. So we have to stand by their side. We have to train them. We have to provide the right training and the right information. And breastfeeding associations should have such a name, such an objective, to allow breastfeeding training to enter the university training of certain professionals, pediatricians, gynecologists. This is where, universities should be talking about breastfeeding. So, following that short introduction, allow me to talk to you about Alkyoni and what Alkyoni is. What is it exactly? It is an initiative stemming from the Institute for the Health of the Children and aiming at promoting breastfeeding. We know why breastfeeding is important. Why should we opt for it? Because it is natural. After birth, infants, be those animals, fish or children, they are fed by their mother. They breastfeed. That's the natural nutrition. However, we know about milk industries that are trying to replace what is natural, starting in 1856. And the more the time passes, the more such industry grows, and it appears as if it was the natural thing to do after birth instead of breastfeeding. And in 1960, we spoke about the somehow humanized milks, substitutes, that they are not substitutes, that they derive from human beings. This is what they taught us. This is why they told us. Then a series of actions took place promoting the right of the child to breastfeed. the right of the child to have access to what is natural, to what is self-evident. In Greece, some dramatic events that took place in the previous century deprived our society and women of the right and the opportunity to breastfeed, because women all of a sudden had to assume to take on different roles in the family. The First World War, the Asia Minor conflict deprived women of their possibility to breastfeed and to play that important role as mothers after birth. They had to be mothers, they had to be fathers, they had to do so many different things at the same time. They had to support the family and help the family overcome the traumas of the war, and then displacement, and then internal displacement, and the women had to go to work to the fields, and breastfeeding became more difficult because the woman had to work hard and she had to be away for quite some time. And this is why many women had to give foreign, alien milk to their children. And I use the word foreign and alien because it's not natural. This whole situation deprived our society of that picture of the woman breastfeeding, of the association of the woman breastfeeding. Very often, women who help women deliver have not breastfed themselves, and they usually say, I have helped for children to grow up with formulas or with foreign milk. Why should this be a problem? Because they don't know about breastfeeding. Anyway, legislation exists for years, but it's not always applied, unfortunately. Apostolos Doxiadis in 1926, he was the Minister of Health at the time. He was in favor of the protection of breastfeeding, and there were some guidelines on the child's nutrition. When should solids be introduced? How long should breastfeeding last? What about women who worked? That there had to be some childminder, some centers for children to be near their mothers to be able to breastfeed. Breastfeeding made a woman's life more easier because they didn't have to wash, to prepare, or whatever. And so the framework was established for breastfeeding women and weaning and so on and so forth. So these were laws protecting the rights of, safeguarding the rights of the child and the right of the mother to breastfeed. However, such laws were never applied. And after the 50s, some scientists finally understood and realized the benefits of breastfeeding. They realized that mortality would be reduced with breastfeeding, that some germs would be reduced and some infections would be reduced. But these were some single actions, not collective actions, unfortunately. And Spiros Doxiadis, who was Minister of Health in 1974 and 1991, legislated the laws in favor of breastfeeding. In 1993, the National Committee of Breastfeeding was established. These are these are parts of the recommendations and the provisions promoting breastfeeding, and mention is made to the ban on informative material and leaflets, and says that it is illegal to use samples of substitutes for milk, for breast milk, and that doctors who do so should be punished. Anyway, the model and the image of mothers breastfeeding were not common, were not familiar. And then a national study on breast milk took place by the Institute for the Health of the Child, which confirmed that the rate of breastfeeding in Greece was very, very low, and that exclusive lactation breastfeeding at 6 months of age was very, very low, and that in the first month breastfeeding stops or is being significantly reduced, and that after the first month only a small percentage of babies go on breastfeeding. So, stemming from those, based on those results, our institute in 2013 undertook the initiative to promote through a specific project which is called Alkyoni to promote breastfeeding. This project was funded by the European Social Fund and by national funds. It was launched in 2013. It was implemented by 2015, and it keeps operating, keeps promoting breastfeeding with funds from the budget of the Institute for the Health of the Child. The aim of this project is to raise the awareness of health professionals and of the society and of the mothers about breastfeeding, convey the message that breastfeeding is not artificial, that it is the self-evident, that it is natural, that it is nothing requiring special knowledge. It is just what a mother should do when giving birth, after giving birth, taking into account the exceptions, which are very, very few. So Alkyoni had the objective to help mothers, to inform mothers, to show, to promote the skills of the mother, to promote the self-evident and natural skills of the mother breastfeeding, and to also help them enhance their self-confidence, tell them that they are capable of breastfeeding, and to do so they had to visit the environment, the close environment of the mothers, to support them, and it had to also resort to all those associations supporting the mothers, and to also raise the awareness of the broader community. Health professionals are important for the project. The project is actually targeted to them, because health professionals accompany the mother at many different stages. Law 1416 is the one now promoting breastfeeding and recognizes the Institute for the Health of the Child as the one in charge of promoting breastfeeding. And there are many different other entities who also do similar things and who are also involved in promoting breastfeeding. The motto of Alkyoni was the natural dimension of breastfeeding, and that all mothers should follow the natural way, the natural path. One group we targeted were mothers and the community and raising the awareness, and the other group were health professionals. So, with that in mind, we wrote a health guide, and we disseminated our informative material. such material is now accessible by all professionals. Seminars were held. Alkyoni, or within the framework of Alkyoni, 15 seminars were organized, but the project also supported seminars organized by other groups, both by providing material, informative material, and know-how, and volunteers, and so on and so forth. So the objective One of our objectives is e-learning. We are about to complete this part of our work, and we're also aiming at documenting and updating our website for it to be constantly updated and in the position to efficiently and properly inform all those interested in receiving information. Then there is a phone line for mothers when they need help. It's been operating since 2013. More than 12,000 calls have reached the line, each call lasting for an average of 20 minutes. It is important to say that such calls, most calls come from the periphery of the state, showing that women with less access to information are the ones who need more help. Lots of informative leaflets have been disseminated, and the website of Alkyoni has helped a lot. Informative material was given to clinics, hospitals, health centers, by scientific associations and by private physicians who wanted to participate and offer information to women. Alkyoni is open to this process. Every time a colleague asks for material, supportive material, we're open to help this colleague, and in trying to inform the community as well, we've created some posters, and we put them in hospitals, the metro, some other mass transport means. We organized many seminars, as I have already said. We created some centers for breastfeeding information, and we also participated in the process of rendering hospitals infant-friendly hospitals. We translated what was needed to translate, and we defined the terms and preconditions that were the criteria, for such a certification. Some hospitals are supported in their phase of transition to become infant-friendly hospitals. 2 hospitals have been certified: Aretaieio Hospital, where I work, and Mitera Hospital. But Mitera Hospital did not wish to be recertified, reaccredited, and this was a first. This was a terrible thing. We couldn't really understand why. Anyway, we help businesses create a space for women to breastfeed or pump their milk, and we've also resorted to private businesses to ask them to create a little corner for women to be able to breastfeed in their businesses. There is a website, the website of Alkyoni, where every mother, through her mobile phone or through Google, can trace, can spot the nearest spots or locations for her to breastfeed, depending on her needs, depending on where she is and what she wants to do.
So there were 3 TV spots and 3 radio spots that were delivered by different regional stations and not and others. Moreover, we expected to promote the work and of the whole proceedings through social media, which is another tool. And as I said earlier, this was the outcome of our efforts that we all, of course, acknowledge that such efforts need to have a regulatory framework in order to be able to establish the framework under which we should operate, and of course leaving aside any margins of misunderstandings, because we know healthcare professionals always do not have the appropriate knowledge on such topics. We refer to the 2014 law. Moreover, in 2018, where the Institute of Public Health for the Child are published in Greece, referred to the nutrition of babies for the first year, and where there is a reference to the exclusive breastfeeding, the new medical log of the child, where in the first pages we can actually see, and there are references where we see that they try to help people understand the need and the importance of breast milk the first hour and the cohabitation. Of course, the new tracks of development, which is very helpful for pediatricians, where the 3rd, 4th month we avoid having any status of panic for women and parents who believe that breast milk is insufficient and they go on for the infant formula. This is the line for Alkyoni, the different guides that are available, and you can download them via the Alkyoni portal. The different brochures related to breastfeeding, breast milk. Most of them were translated, some others were translated also in minority languages who live in Greece, for immigrants, for example. And of course, these are the breastfeeding areas and the counseling centers, some of the actions to engage people in the society in breastfeeding. And over here, this is the new book log for children, which is distributed since 2017, June 2017. No, I'm sorry, this is the informed consent to the speaker, which also started in June 2017. And whenever the pediatrician or the midwife believes that there is a need to administer infant formula, mother should be informed why infant formula should be offered to the child, what are the potential risks and dangers, and the pediatricians need to explain why they opt for this solution. Now, as far as my personal experience in Aretaieio hospital, this is not delivered because with all the other informed consent which are given during the entry for cesarean section, for many different, we also give the informed consent form for the infant formula. I don't know what happens in other Greek hospitals, but whenever a woman arrives at the Aretaieio hospital, a mother needs to sign all of these documents. So we do inform mothers and we explain what are the reasons for the utilization of infant formula. And I expect that all of my colleagues will follow the same practice. But of course, every change demands a certain level of patience. The fact that we do have these new policies is already a win. So we see that it takes some time for some mentalities to change, but I believe this is towards the good direction. Now, as you can see, this is a book log for children where there is a reference whether the infant or the newborn went to the mother's breast on the first hour. And what's the problem? It's not the case. Well, this is an issue. Then whenever the pediatrician sees, will understand the rationale. Let me see, maybe the first, the second, the third time that he or she writes down some notes. He will not see it attentively, but when mother sees that, and when asking when I did it, when I didn't, why the newborn is not in my room, so we change the mentality, and this is what we expect to happen. Now, this is during the outing of the hospital, where the pediatrician signs the document. He should explain why he suggests the utilization of infant formula. We said about the growth standards by WHO that will help pediatricians a lot, because there are growth standards who have breastfed for 4 months from very different countries, and it is a guideline by the WHO that need to be applied universally. Now, about e-learning, I refer to e-learning, and finally, let me refer to the 2017 study about breastfeeding that took place 10 years after the initial one. It was an epidemiological study which expected not just to measure whether all these efforts by Alkyoni and by other, of course, associations and teams for the support of breastfeeding have some concrete and tangible positive results. So we want to see whether there was a differentiation. The second was to see what are the inefficiencies and at which point things need to be changed to probably implement a new policy. But of course, you need to know what are your inefficiencies. This study was conducted by the same questionnaire that was used in the 2007 initial study. The target were newborns who are still being breastfed after the 6 months of life. We applied the common methodology, the same questionnaire as I said. The approach of mothers or the family was once again via phone, having initially explained what was the status, and we asked for an informed consent orally. And as indicators for breastfeeding, we check the initiation periods of breastfeeding, the exclusive breastfeeding, the almost exclusive breastfeeding, the total breastfeeding, and breastfeeding. So we see the different types of breastfeeding, which of course, according to the WHO, it can be classified in 4 different subcategories. Moreover, in this study, after these initial indicators by WHO, but now, as in our country, we saw the pediatricians understand that there is utilization of solids right from the 4th month of the newborns. We have introduced an additional indicator, which is called breast milk without any milk substitute. So it might have some additional food, like solids, but no infant formula has been utilized. And of course, we also check the introduction of solids. Now, comparing the studies of 2007-2017, we saw that the response rate was 65 against 61. The size and the weight of the child, the first study, 91% was more than 2.5 kilos. We were talking about term babies, where premature was more or less the same. in other words, about 10.5%, what is suggested by international literature. What had actually changed, we had more cesarean sections, where it was around 50%, now it is 54%. And there is the Elstat of 2015, which has about 56% cesarean sections conducted in Greece. Now, the ratio between private and public sector hospitals, it's almost the same. There is a minor supremacy for private hospitals. Now, the percentage of women that worked was smaller in 2017 against 2017. And this is due to the crisis. We have fewer mothers who work. Now, about Greeks and foreigners, we see a supremacy between people coming from Albania. What is also quite impressive in this study is the percentage of the graduate studies and undergraduate studies by mothers. So we see the dramatic change in a period of 10 years. We see that mothers are very well educated after the college. So we see there's an increase of 20%, which is extremely high. But of course, it's not something new. It is a trend. And Elstat, the National Statistic Authority of Greece, show that Greek women have an excellent level of training, skills, and studies. 33% actually of women have studied at the university nowadays in Greece. Now, fewer mothers smoke. And now we arrive at the essence of the study, where we see about breastfeeding. And there is a comparative study between 2007 and 2017 in terms of data. And it seems that we have more women breastfeeding. The percentage was 90, now it's 94. So there is a great tendency of women to breastfeed. But in the first week, there is an important decrease from 91 and 94%. It falls in 90%. And the greatest happens fall in the first month, where we arrive at a percentage of 80%. This always is related to breastfeeding. We're not referring to exclusive breastfeeding. So it seems that these are two issues that healthcare professionals should target on. So in other words, counselors, advisors of lactation should focus on that, because it seems that there is, as I said, a rapid fall in the percentage of breastfeeding mothers between first day and 30th day. So healthcare professionals who work with mothers and along with the family, they should inform accordingly mothers in order to support in this beautiful endeavor, which is, of course, breastfeeding. Thus, information should not only be conveyed to mothers, but it should be transmitted to every member of the family. We see a stabilization in the third month, between third and fourth month, where percentages are similar, and we're at the 6th month at a percentage of 45%. This is very important. So we see this constant decrease, because it seems against the 2007 study we have double percentage of Greek babies which are breastfed. But of course, it's not an exclusive breastfeeding, as I said. But as you can actually see, there's a reason why I'm making this particular reference. So indeed, we see a better result. It is not, of course, the percentage we would have expected, because the WHO target is to have 55% women breastfeeding by 2025. Now, referring to exclusive breastfeeding, well, over here, things are rather disappointing. You can see the rapid fall in terms of the infant. From 65% we fall in the 6th month of the child to around 0%. So we see the decrease I referred to earlier, this rapid fall, and we see that the great fall between 2nd and 4th month of the infant, the exclusive breastfeeding is rather stable, and between fourth to fifth month there's a rapid fall, and we lose exclusive breastfeeding, and we have the use of solids. But of course, compared to previous studies, we see a doubling of the figures in the third and fourth month of the infant. That is why we should see this positive message from the comparative study between 2007 and 2017. Now, this is what I said. We calculated the breast milk without substitute of breast milk between 2007 and 2017. And we see that the percentage is around 25% against previous study, which was around 10%. So it seems that mothers are willing to breastfeed. They want to prolong breastfeeding. But of course, we do not see statistical difference in some cases. But still, in breastfeeding, I need to say that the next issue is the introduction of solids. We know that lately, the last 5 to 6 years, the allergological societies have underlined the early introduction of solids, and they said that this would actually affect the existence of any allergies. This is what we just suggested. The introduction of solids happens at a very early age. Already from the mid-third month, we do have newborns who eat solids. And after after the 5th or 6th month, we see that all babies receive solids. Now, I'm not going to enter into every detail of the study, but I will simply present the positive correlation of breastfeeding. The practice of hospitals who promote breastfeeding have a significantly different outcome and result. And we see, of course, better percentages and results against the 2007 study. So we see that this is also related with the better results that have been noted. And of course, we have a better compliance with the marketing code. So the hospitals who offered sample in this study were 19%, when the previous study of 2007 were 36% of hospitals gave sample of infant formula, whereas half of the hospitals gave any advice on infant formula. And there was no difference between public and private, I need to say, maternity clinics. Now, negative correlations with breastfeeding in the first month, in the 6th month, is when mother smokes, or it is underweight, the newborn is underweight, or if it has not been breastfed in the first hour, then has lower opportunities to be breastfed in the months to come. We see a positive correlation with the level of knowledge of women. Those who had a better knowledge, they were more used to breastfeed. And of course, term babies had a greater tendency towards breastfeeding right from the first month. And despite the fact that foreign mothers didn't have any difference in terms of the onset of breastfeeding, we saw that those mothers, they tend to breastfeed for a longer period. Now, the difficulties in the onset of breastfeeding has to do with difficulty in breastfeeding, traumas in the nipple area, that there is an inefficient quantity of milk produced by mothers, and when we see the issue of the weight of the child, when the pediatrician needs to refer that at this moment they should introduce infant formula, otherwise the child will continue to be overweight. So of course, in this case, we need to be protective, because we are referring to the growth rates. breastfeeding is not also affected by the reintroduction of mothers into the workforce. Now, the type of maternity clinic, the type of insurance, or the type of work is not correlated with breastfeeding, but of course, the longevity of breastfeeding has to do whether mother has received a paid leave. So, as a conclusion, it seems that between 2007 and 2017, results are far better. All of these actions by Alkyoni and by the different NGOs and the support groups and the breastfeeding committee had tangible positive results, but still there's a lot of things that we need to do. It also seems that the greater loss and failure is during the first week and first month. What we also said that breastfeeding without substitute in the fourth month is double against previous studies. And of course, the introduction of solids or non-solids starts really early. And of course, this affects the exclusive breastfeeding. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Iliodromiti. I'm afraid we are running out of time for questions. Comments off microphone cannot be translated. Please ask from the speaker to use a microphone. I would like to ask, 6 months onwards, is there a study? No. In this study, we did not examine any other group age. So, in this study, we examined newborns 0 to 6 months. Whereas in the previous month was 0 to 12 months. But of course, let's say indirectly in this questionnaire, mothers who participated need to be between 6 and 9 months old. So as over the question whether you continue to breastfeed, it seems that women who breastfeed in the 6th month, they also breastfeed at the 9th month. But still, it was not something which was calculated and tangible as a figure. So, but I think it's really dangerous that we start offering solids into the 4th month. It's like we need to go back to work and we leave our children to grandmothers. There are many different reasons, to be honest. If the pediatrician, for instance, is crystal clear and explains to mother, yes, it is okay, they have decreased the rhythm of breastfeeding, they have a greater growth rhythm. But of course, if the pediatrician, after the 3rd or 4th month, where the rhythm starts changing the growth rate and says that there's no reason to add anything else and continue with breastfeeding, then mothers will continue to breastfeed. So it is probably our own, let's say, stress or anxiety. The increased number of cesarean sections, I don't know whether mothers are informed. They are not asked whether they want to proceed to this procedure, and they do know that there's a higher level of mortality whenever a C-section is conducted. And probably the women who prefer for section, they should be paid for that. This is tragic. And the last thing I wanted to say, I'm a student at the Technical School of Athens, and we have never talked about breastfeeding, so we need more information on your behalf.
Any more questions? With reference to preventive prescription of milk from pediatricians, the one that is being handed out to women, to mothers when they leave the hospital, what about this vis-à-vis the legislation? Whether the mother should sign a consensus. If there is no medical reason, such prescription should not be given. Yes, but I don't know whether this is something that we can avoid. I don't know whether there has been any change or not. Well, the study has shown that the percentage is much lower of that. It was 70%. Now it's much lower. That kind of prescription should only be given to children with a medical issue. But half of the hospitals of the country still give this prescription. Just one comment with reference to the introduction of solids. I believe that we are close to the golden rule because now mention is made of a gradual introduction of solids that will not substitute meals or breastfeeding. So the percentage has increased. The percentage of infants who breastfeed without formulas and are gradually being introduced to solids, that percentage is increasing. Yes, it's true, and there have been some conferences recently. And it has been said that solids should come after the first 6 months. Mr. Adomidis, training about the immune system of the child takes place through the micro quantities of protein through the breast milk. What the mother eats becomes familiar with the immune system of the child, so the child becomes familiar, even taste-wise. So we don't really need to introduce micro quantities of proteins or solids because the nature itself already does that for us. But anyway. Pagal's president allegedly goes to conferences of pediatricians and insists on her stances, on her tenets, beliefs, saying that solids should be introduced in the 4th month. This is still an open field for debate because the data are not sufficient to support her belief. But anyway, and who is Espagan? Espagan is funded by Nestlé. Espagan's offices, headquarters are in Nestlé's headquarters. And who is the president of Espagan? She is financed by Danone. So a professor from Milano actually saw to the drafting of the first guideline about the introduction of solids in the 4th month. So behind the scientific scenes, different things are to be discovered. Thank you very much for your attention.
Αν δεν υπάρχει άλλη ερώτηση, ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Υπάρχει?
Είναι μια κυρία, η κυρία.
Παρακαλώ.
There is one more question apparently. Congratulations on your work. Is it feasible for pediatricians to make the shift, because they are the first ones, that they need to tell the mother that her body is changing, so apart from calcium, apart from other things, I mean, the breast changes, the color changes, the color of the nipples, the size changes, and so on and so forth. There is no time to provide information on breastfeeding at times, because doctors do not have enough time, but maybe provide an information, like, say, for example, some women say, I'd like to breastfeed if I have milk, but maybe the pediatrician could provide a signature. A signature stating that the pediatrician informed the mother on breastfeeding, on the possibility to breastfeed. Because some women are not informed, they are not at all informed. So maybe we should try to find a solution. I have friends who are gynecologists, I have colleagues, and so, yeah, things are changing gradually. Pediatricians gradually change their mind I recently participated in a conference on perigenetics, and all foreign speakers, very important speakers, very famous speakers, stated that breastfeeding is a protective mechanism in cases of intrauterine delay. This was the main theme of the conference. It's not very easy to change, to make important changes, but change gradually takes place. We keep saying that colleagues at the hospital should do a lot of work in the first week, and midwives should do a lot of work in the first week to inform the mother. The sooner the better. Thank you very much.